Imagine you are caught in a blizzard. The wind howls, a physical force stealing the warmth from your body. Snow, blinding and relentless, erases the world, and the temperature plummets to a level where survival is measured in minutes. Now, imagine this isn't just a freak storm. What if this was your reality for 4, 5, or even 6 months, every single year, for your entire life? And what if you faced it not with down-filled parkas and insulated boots, but with little more than what you could fashion from stone, bone, and animal hide? This was the challenge faced by our ancient ancestors. For hundreds of thousands of years, early humans, species like the Neanderthals and the first modern Homo sapiens, didn't just survive in a world of ice and snow, they thrived. They pushed out of the relative warmth of Africa and into the frigid landscapes of Ice Age Europe and Asia, enduring conditions that would test the limits of modern survival technology. So, the question is not just if they survived, but how. How did a species born in the sun-drenched savannas become the undisputed master of the frozen world? To understand this incredible feat of evolution and ingenuity, we have to look at the evidence left behind, a trail of clues scattered across tens of thousands of years. It's a story written in fossilized bones, in carefully shaped stones, and in the very fabric of our DNA. It's the story of how humanity conquered winter. Our first line of defense was, as it is for any species, the body itself. Evolution is a master sculptor, and over countless generations, it shaped some early human populations for the cold. The most famous example is the Neanderthal. For a long time, they were depicted as brutish, hunched-over cavemen, but the evidence suggests a far more sophisticated reality. Their bodies were a masterpiece of biological engineering for a cold climate. Neanderthals were typically shorter and stockier than modern humans. This might seem like a disadvantage, but it's pure physics. A sphere has the least amount of surface area for its volume, which is the most efficient shape for retaining heat. A stocky, compact body is closer to that sphere than a tall, lanky one. Essentially, their build was designed to minimize heat loss, like a well-insulated container. Their limbs were also shorter, reducing the surface area from which precious body heat could escape. Evidence suggests their circulatory system may have even been different, with an increased blood flow to the extremities to help prevent frostbite. And then there was the face. Neanderthals are famous for their prominent brow ridges and large, wide noses. For years, scientists debated the purpose of this distinctive nasal structure. It turns out it may have been a built-in radiator and humidifier. When you inhale brutally cold, dry air, it can do serious damage to your lungs. The large nasal cavity of a Neanderthal would have provided a vast, mucous membrane-lined surface area to warm and humidify that air before it reached the delicate lung tissue. When they exhaled, the system would work in reverse, recapturing moisture and heat from their breath. But what about our direct ancestors, Homo sapiens? When they arrived in Europe around 45,000 years ago, they were a tropical species. Their bodies were taller, more slender, built for efficiently dissipating heat on the African plains, not for conserving it in a blizzard. While some minor adaptations occurred over time, they were never as biologically specialized for the cold as the Neanderthals. So, if they couldn't rely on their bodies alone, they had to rely on something else: their minds. They had to outthink the cold, and their primary weapon in this fight was technology. The first and most important piece of technology was not a stone tool, but a tamed force of nature: fire. Imagine the world before the routine control of fire. Night is a terrifying, absolute darkness, filled with the sounds of predators you cannot see. Food is tough, difficult to digest, and often riddled with parasites, and cold is a constant, creeping threat that never truly goes away. The mastery of fire changed everything. A hearth became the center of human existence. It provided warmth, a bubble of artificial summer in the dead of winter. It provided light, extending the usable day and allowing for more time to work on tools, prepare food, and, crucially, to socialize. Fire kept nocturnal predators at a safe distance, turning a dangerous cave into a secure fortress, and it was a revolutionary kitchen appliance. Cooking food doesn't just make it taste better, it unlocks calories. The process of heating breaks down tough fibers and proteins, making them far easier to digest. This meant our ancestors could extract significantly more energy from the exact same hunt, fueling their large, energy-hungry brains. Control of fire was humanity's first great victory over the randomness of the natural world. With the hearth as their base, they turned their ingenuity to tools. Early humans had been making stone tools for billions of years, but during the Ice Age, this technology became incredibly refined. Neanderthals developed a sophisticated toolkit known as the Mousterian industry, featuring specialized scrapers, points, and hand axes. These weren't just crude rocks, they were precisely designed implements. The scrapers, for instance, were vital for winter survival. After a hunt, a large animal hide had to be meticulously scraped clean of fat and flesh. If this wasn't done properly, the hide would rot and become useless. A well-made scraper was the difference between a warm cloak and no protection at all. When Homo sapiens arrived on the scene, they brought with them an even more advanced toolkit, part of what's called the Upper Paleolithic Revolution. They created long, slender blades from stone cores, a technique that was much more efficient and produced more cutting edge per pound of rock. But their most game-changing invention may have been something small, delicate, and easily overlooked: the sewing needle. Archaeologists have found exquisite needles crafted from bone and ivory, some dating back more than 30,000 years. Some are so fine they have tiny drilled eyes that could only have been made with other specialized micro-tools. It turns out, the invention of the needle was as transformative for surviving the cold as the control of fire. Before the needle, you could only drape animal hides over your body. They would be clumsy, drafty, and inefficient. But with a needle and thread, made from animal sinew, you could do something revolutionary. You could tailor clothing. You could cut pieces of hide to shape and sew them together, creating fitted trousers, sleeves, and parkas with hoods. You could stitch multiple layers together, trapping air between them, the same principle behind modern multi-layered outdoor gear. This created a personal, portable microclimate, a pocket of warmth that you could carry with you wherever you went. Evidence for this tailored clothing is found in the art our ancestors left behind. Figurines like the famous Venus of Willendorf may show evidence of woven hats, and carvings from Siberia appear to depict individuals in fully tailored hooded outerwear, strikingly similar to a modern Inuit anorak. This technology allowed our slender, tropical-adapted species to venture into the coldest corners of the planet. But tools and clothing weren't enough. You also need shelter. While caves provided excellent natural protection, they weren't always available or in the right location. So, ancient humans built their own. One of the most astonishing examples of this comes from a site called Mezhyryk in modern-day Ukraine. Here, dating back some 15,000 years, archaeologists uncovered several huts constructed from an incredible building material: mammoth bones. Imagine the effort. These structures were made from hundreds of mammoth bones, skulls, jaws, tusks, and leg bones, carefully interlocked to create a sturdy, dome-shaped framework, which was likely then covered in animal hides. One hut used the bones of at least 95 different mammoths. This wasn't a temporary lean-to. This was sophisticated, planned architecture. It was a monumental group project requiring immense cooperation and a shared vision. Inside these huts, hearths burned, tools were made, and life went on, shielded from the glacial winds outside. This brings us to perhaps the most critical element of Ice Age survival, something that ties everything else together: society. No single human, no matter how strong or clever, could have survived an Ice Age winter alone. Survival was a team sport. The evidence of large-scale construction like the mammoth huts and the remains of large game like bison and mammoths at kill sites points to highly organized, cooperative groups. These groups were libraries of accumulated knowledge. The elders would have held a mental map of the territory, knowing where to find shelter, where flint for tools could be quarried, and, most importantly, how the animal herds moved with the seasons. They had to be expert naturalists, with a deep understanding of animal behavior. They knew that in winter, certain animals would congregate in sheltered valleys, and they planned their entire seasonal movements around this. This foresight is a hallmark of modern human consciousness. They weren't just living in the present, they were actively planning for a predictable but dangerous future. During the short summers and autumns, they would have been in a race against time, stockpiling resources. They would hunt not just for immediate consumption, but for preservation. Meat could be cut into thin strips and air-dried to create a kind of jerky. Fat could be rendered down and stored in bladders, providing a high-energy food source for the leanest months. They would gather storable plant foods and fuel for their fires. In short, they understood the concept of saving for a rainy, or rather, a snowy, day. Within the group, they shared food and cared for one another. Fossil evidence shows that individuals with severe injuries, who would have been unable to hunt or even walk, often lived for years afterward. A Neanderthal skeleton found at Shanidar Cave in Iraq belonged to an individual who had suffered a crushing blow to the head, was partially blind, had a withered arm, and walked with a limp. Yet he lived to be middle-aged, which would have been impossible without the long-term care of his group. This compassion, this social safety net, was a powerful survival strategy. It ensured that experienced and knowledgeable members of the group were kept alive, even after their physical prime. So, what does this all mean? When we piece together the evidence, a picture emerges of a species that met the challenge of a hostile world with a multi-layered defense. It began with biological adaptations forged by evolution over billions of years, but it was taken to a whole new level by the power of consciousness and cooperation. They used their intelligence to tame fire, to invent revolutionary tools, and to design clothing and shelter that allowed them to carry a bubble of warmth into the heart of the ice. They built complex societies that functioned as archives of knowledge and networks of mutual support. Ultimately, the story of how ancient humans survived the deadly winters of the Ice Age is not just a story of endurance. It is the story of the birth of modern humanity. In the face of the planet's harshest climates, our ancestors didn't just retreat. They innovated, they cooperated, and they planned. They looked at a world of ice and saw opportunity. In conquering the cold, they forged the very traits of ingenuity, resilience, and community that have carried our species from mammoth hunts and stone tools to the exploration of the stars. The Ice Age was a crucible, and it was in that frozen furnace that we were truly made.